and welcome to the Listener's Nest. The story we're sharing with you this time is based on an incident in the life of Franz Kafka. Kafka was a German language author who wrote in the early 19th century, early 1900s, and whose work has had a huge impact on world literature. So, this is an incident from his life. And rather than reading out the story to you as we normally do, I'm going to narrate it so that you can enjoy the true art of storytelling in English, and so that the story is a bit more natural and enjoyable to you. Presenting Kafka and the Traveling Doll. So there was this park that Kafka would go to every morning for a walk or just to sit on the bench and find some inspiration. This park was a place full of life. All sorts of people visited the park. Little children dressed in bright colors, couples, older people, people selling various things, and many artists. There were musicians, painters, poets, and authors like Kafka, all of them visiting the park for some peace and inspiration. So he was there that morning sitting on a park bench when he suddenly heard the sound of a little child crying not very far from where he was sitting. As he looked around, he saw a little girl standing alone in a corner, crying softly. He immediately got up and went to her. He noticed that she looked very young, about 7 or 8 years old, but she didn't look poor or hungry. She was very prettily dressed. A beautiful skirt and blouse, boots, and she had long flowing red hair. Kafka looked around but saw no adult accompanying her. What can I do? He thought. Is she lost? Will she be afraid if I approach her? Well, I can't just leave her alone like this, he thought, and finally mustered the courage to approach her. With a gentle face and a sweet smile, he spoke to her. Hello, he said. She looked at him unafraid. Kafka could see the big tears running down her cheeks. What's wrong? He asked her gently. Are you lost? Not me, she said. It's not me who's lost. That's a strange answer, he thought. Where do you live? He asked. She pointed to some houses behind the pine trees. It was quite clear that she wasn't lost. Well, okay, Franz said to her. Who's lost then? My doll, the girl exclaimed and started crying again. Oh no, please stop crying. Franz tried frantically to comfort her. Your doll? She is lost, you say? Franz asked her. Yes, she replied, still sobbing, still crying. All this sobbing and crying made Kafka very uncomfortable. He was not used to interacting with little children, but he really wanted to help her and for her to stop crying. Where did you see her last? He asked her. There, she said, pointing to a bench not very far from where they were standing. I was playing with her yesterday. I just went for a few seconds to pluck a flower, and when I returned, she was gone. The girl was uncontrollable now, sobbing loudly, such that everyone in the park started looking at the two of them. Franz wondered what to do. Where does he even begin looking for a doll in such a big park? For all he knew, it would have already been picked up by someone. Just then, he had an idea. He was a writer after all, and his imagination was starting to work. Wait, he said. I'm really so forgetful. What's your doll's name? He asked the little girl. Bridget, she said. Of course, Bridget. That's her. I am so sorry. This is really careless of me, he said. The girl looked at him with wide eyes. She couldn't understand what he was talking about. Your doll hasn't gone missing, Kafka said cheerfully. She's gone traveling. Traveling? She asked. Where to? And why would she just go away without saying goodbye? She said, her eyes brimming with tears again. Come, he said. Let's sit here in the shade and I'll tell you everything. They went and sat on a bench nearby under the shade of some trees. The thing was that Franz needed to rest. He was only about 40, but he was very ill. He had tuberculosis, TB. This often made him weak and tired, requiring him to sit and rest several times in the day. "You see," he said, looking at her with kind eyes. "Bridget was getting a bit restless at home," he explained. "She wanted to get out and see the world, learn something new, have an adventure." Kafka had to think fast. He knew that the little girl was not stupid, and he had to sound convincing and believable and ensure that what he had started wouldn't come crashing down on the both of them in a failed attempt. "And what is your name?" he asked her. "Anna," she said. "Anna, of course," he exclaimed. "That's the name on the letter," he said excitedly. "Letter? What letter?" she asked, growing more curious. "The letter we received at the post office this morning. You see, I'm a postman and today's my day off. Otherwise, I would have delivered the letter to you this morning. And I didn't know that I'd meet you here, or I would have got it with me," he explained. Anna, still a bit confused and wide-eyed, asked him, "Do you mean Bridget has written me a letter?" "Yes, and if you meet me tomorrow, I'll give it to you right in your hand," he said. "But why would she go without informing me? Without saying goodbye? Why would she not take me with her?" Anna asked, tearing up again. "Well, maybe she thought that you wouldn't understand her. You wouldn't let her go. You're still young, Anna," he went on. "But there comes a point in every grown-up girl's life when she wants to leave her comfortable nest and fly out into the world, spreading her wings and exploring what there is beyond her horizon. Maybe that's why Bridget left as she did. And in any case, we'll know once you've read the letter tomorrow, won't we?" he said with an encouraging tone and a wide smile. "Oh, but I don't know how to read yet," Anna said sadly. "Oh, don't you worry about that," he said. "If you allow me, I'll read it out to you." And this was enough to bring a big bright smile to Anna's face. She nodded, hopped off the bench, waved goodbye, and skipped away happily, eagerly waiting for the next day. Kafka couldn't believe what he had just done. He was a writer, of course, but he had never written a letter coming from a doll. He got up from the bench, feeling very anxious. What would Bridget the doll be like? Where would she be gone to? How could he explain all of this to Anna in a letter? He arrived home feverish. His forehead was boiling hot, but he was only thinking about the mystery that he had just created. A traveling doll. Anna was still a little child, and in her world there was still trust and love and hope, and Kafka couldn't take that away from her. He would never let that happen, especially after all that he had said to her and the promises he had made. And so, despite his fever, he sat down on his desk and began penning down a letter from Bridget to Anna. Well, that's it for the first part. Do tune in for the concluding part next week. And before you leave, please give this video a thumbs up if you found this form of storytelling interesting. It really encourages us to bring you more such interesting stories. And don't forget to subscribe to the Listener's Nest for similar content. Thanks for listening and see you next week. This story was narrated by Shri Nirani.